of a more coordinated effort? Was this a singular attack, or was he part of a cell that could be leading more attacks down the road? So that is generally why law enforcement, the FBI, are going to move as rapidly as possible to not only define if there's potentially more attacks, but what were the motivations? Was there funding involved? Was there foreign cells involved? There's a lot of questions they need to move on quickly, and hence that is why they're moving with speed.
Now, I want to read the statement from Senate Majority Leader John Thune. He posted on X, grateful for the Secret Service and the agents' decisive actions to protect President Trump and everyone at and around the White House this evening. Kimberly and I are praying for the safety and security of those who were in harm's way. Now, Randy, our reporter, Mari, had said that the roads were still blocked off. She was showing us different streets and different angles. It looks like it's going kind of far because she was about a block away from where this apparently occurred. So do they tend to block off more area than was the immediate area where incidents occurred?
Yes. Once you lose control of the scene, you've lost control of the scene. So they want to set the perimeter out as far as possible to control the egress and also to look for any possible evidence that might be in the area. You know, they'll be looking for any discarded items that the suspect may have thrown away. They'll be looking for any rounds that were fired. They'll be looking for any evidence that might be within that perimeter. So once you lose control of that perimeter, you can't get it back. Better to have a wider area and then close it down. Remember, you also have multiple jurisdictions here. You know, the FBI is going to be taking over an investigation, but still you have Secret Service, you have Washington Metro PD, you have Capitol Police, you got a lot of different agencies here. And so you have to coordinate all of those agencies and their different areas of responsibilities.
Now, you just mentioned a lot of the different agencies we're seeing now on screen, a group of people here which potentially are from the different agencies. I don't know if they're bystanders or not. I wouldn't think there would be bystanders that close. We're seeing the crisscross tape and one individual inside of the tape looking around. Mike, can you talk to us a little bit about what we're seeing here and what they could be doing?
Yes, absolutely. So this is part of the follow-on investigation. One, the sensitive site exploitation. They're going to be very sensitive with this evidence. One, they don't want to contaminate it for possible clues to lead to any follow-on investigations. But to the gentleman's point, the cooperation between this many entities has only strengthened since 9/11, where there used to be very concrete silos. Our organizations, all three-letter agencies, all law enforcement, work very well together now because they each bring different strengths and they overlap each other's weaknesses. And they know together, collectively, that they can close the loop on the questions that they have, the evidence that they have, and ultimately, frame up why this was conducted, the motivations behind it, if there's anything that requires further investigation. But always love to see multiple organizations on site working together to bring all of their capabilities to bear in an incident like this.
Now we have another statement. This one's from Speaker Mike Johnson. He says, "We are grateful for our brave Secret Service agents who took quick, decisive action to protect President Trump, and our prayers are with the victims of tonight's senseless shooting for a speedy recovery. Our law enforcement officers run into harm's way each day to keep us safe, and they deserve our unwavering support." Randy, your response to that?
Well, I couldn't agree more. I wish that it didn't take an act of violence and seeing our law enforcement in harm's way to get the attention of our political leadership. The fact of the matter is that when you see an incident like this take place with the visibility in front of the White House, it really brings to bear the harsh realities of law enforcement, and that is that They are in harm's way. They are the uniformed, especially the uniformed officers. They are the most visible aspects of our government. And of course, they are the law enforcement. They are the law enforcement. So they are open targets. And they have to, here's the thing. When you're involved in a critical incident, especially a gunfight like took place here today, you're reactive. The individual who made the attack today, who opened fire on these officers first, he knew what he was going to do. The law enforcement officers have to react to that, and there's always a danger, because in reacting to a critical incident like this, the suspect has the advantage when it comes down to opening fire first. And happily, in this particular instance, the officers acted professionally. They acted with skill, and they were able to bring the suspect down without any harm to themselves. Of course, we've got to find out about the individual who was shot. Was he shot by the suspect, or was he hit by gunfire from the returning gunfire from the officers? This is always another one of the critical issues of law enforcement. You have to be very aware of your backdrop when you're opening fire, and when people are shooting at you, that is a lot easier said than done.
Now, we've seen here that Speaker Mike Johnson talks about our law enforcement running into harm's way each day to keep us safe. So, Mike, how important is it for us to understand the risks that they take, and for us to support law enforcement, not just at the White House, but across the country?
No, that's a great point. Arguably, and we all know this, law enforcement has been under attack, predominantly from the left. Beyond the defund the police, just the lack of support for these brave men and women. To Randy's point, it's one thing to be in the military, and I spent 20 years in the military, and we're usually on the offensive. He makes a great point that, even for the Secret Service, you can go months or years without being involved in an incident like this. And then all of a sudden, you find yourself in a worst case scenario. The vigilance that these men and women 24/7 have to apply every time they go into work, that brings a stress, an emotional and a spiritual toll that I don't think a majority of Americans will ever understand. But even beyond the Secret Service, like you said, the law enforcement, our men and women in blue out on the streets every day dealing with, just the worst situations you can think of. You've got to pat them on the back. As a nation, we've got to step up and we've got to support our law enforcement. And will they handle some situations badly? Absolutely. Guess what? They're human. These men and women are human. And when you're in these situations for which no book solutions exist, and you've got to make decisions like these gentlemen made today, removing a threat in near real time, mistakes happen. And again, we'll find out if it was law enforcement fire, Secret Service fire that injured this innocent bystander. That happens. There is collateral damage. But ultimately, who's to blame for this is the gentleman who attacked these officers who were defending the White House and the president. So I think, this being Memorial Day weekend, I know it's focused on our military who paid the ultimate sacrifice. The law enforcement's doing the same thing. And I would rather do another 20 years in the military than become law enforcement, given the current environment. And I think Randy on the previous segment talked about that and the low recruiting numbers. We've seen recruitment in the military rise because of the national pride. That needs to be applied to our law enforcement as well, and it needs to be applied now.
Now, Randy, your organization, Wounded Blue, deals with officers who have been hurt in the line of duty. Talk to us about what they go through.
Yeah, my organization is a nationwide charity that is made up of all cops who have been shot, stabbed, beaten, run over, face serious injury, either physical or emotional, psychological, and work with other officers to help them deal with their injuries. We do life-changing and life-saving stuff. When I see the true impact of the violence towards our law enforcement, I see it in up close and personal. I'm dealing with a police officer right now who was shot with a .223 round during a domestic dispute, severely injured. In fact, she will never be the same. And here's the harsh reality that this officer is facing. Because she cannot return to work within a year, they are terminating her with no benefits. So when you talk about the unjust actions of communities and law enforcement agencies and cities and political people who are in positions of leadership, it's time for them to step up. It's time for them to realize that law enforcement officers around this nation are facing serious physical and psychological injury, and they need to step up to the plate and play the role that they need to play, and that is in safeguarding these individuals who have given so much, and to give them the care, the physical, medical care, and psychological care that they so richly deserve, instead of the way some of them are being treated.
All right, Randy and Mike, we're going to come back to you in just a little bit, but now we want to go back to our entity White House correspondent Mari Otsu, who is on the scene there now. Mari, what more are we learning?
Hey, Arlene. Yeah, so in the time since we last spoke, more police have arrived here, a couple up the road there near I. We're on H and 17th. That's just one block up from 17th and Penn. That's where the Eisenhower building is. It's also where the press entrance that I use is to get onto the White House campus. That's where those shots were ringing out at about 6:15 p.m. today. Reporters there who were already at the White House captured some of that in their live shots, and were then ushered into the briefing room where they were held on lockdown on the White House campus for about 30 minutes. And we're now getting that President Trump has been briefed on the situation. We haven't yet heard directly from the president, but I'm standing by for Truth Social. As we know, on the night of April 25th, the White House Correspondents' Dinner shooting, when it was taking place, President Trump from the venue, still at the Washington Hilton, was saying that he wanted the night to go on. And I mean, as security-wise, that wasn't able to happen. But he was active there and immediately wanting to address the situation. And then when that wasn't possible, when it wasn't possible for the dinner to go on, he then said that he wanted it to be rescheduled, while also calling a press briefing at the James Brady briefing room within 30 minutes. So who knows? I mean, that could be a possibility tonight. I think information is still being gathered. Clearly, all of the streets around the White House here are still blocked off. There's caution tape. Secret Service, National Guardsmen, and lots of police still here, even though we know that the suspect is now dead. And we do know that this was, we don't yet know the motive exactly, but that it needs to be mentioned that it was very broadcast that President Trump would be here in the White House this Memorial Day weekend. He had, mentioned publicly on his social media website that he unfortunately couldn't make it to his son Don Jr.'s and Bettina's wedding, while congratulating them, saying that he felt it was very important for him to be at the White House during this very important point in time. And people were tracking, his cabinet members, including Vice President J.D. Vance, their location. He came back to the Situation Room for the meeting today. And so I think it must be mentioned that people knew that the president was here. And I'm still seeing around me lots of interested bystanders, interested tourists. It is Memorial Day weekend, and so lots of tourists are flocking here. And this is certainly a very iconic place, the White House and Lafayette Park, and all of the streets surrounding it. Arlene.
All right, Mari, thank you so much for that update. And we're going to go back now to Mike Sorelli and Randy Sutton to get their comments on the latest. Mike, I know you have to go soon, so I want to get your comments on what we just heard from our reporter Mari Otsu about what's going on there on the ground. She mentioned that President Trump has been briefed, and they're just kind of waiting around to see if he's going to hold a press conference or not. What are your thoughts on that?
My thoughts are President Trump has been briefed on these way too many times for any president. This is becoming a reoccurring incident with President Trump. Now, I think ultimately to the motivation, that's the key questions. You always want to deal with what you know and what you don't know. And there's a lot we don't know in this situation because dead men don't talk. We can't interrogate this individual. And I think the two primary things we want to know in terms of motives is, was this a lone wolf, whether it be politically motivated from the left, or was this a potential act of terrorism and they had financing, support, or training from a foreign terrorist cell? And that's the two questions they're going to try to close the loop on as rapidly as possible. But back to my original point, I think we Americans are getting tired with the amount of attempts that have been taken on President Trump's life. This is becoming an epidemic. It's not a singular act here and there. This is becoming an epidemic, and if it is politically motivated, the left has a real issue with their far-leaning, fanatical, progressive left members. And the left needs to address this. The right can't solve it. Only the left can. With their rhetoric, with what they're promoting, stop calling people Nazis. And that's what's extremely troublesome to me.
Mike, I know you have to go, so before you leave, I want to get your final thoughts on this, given that it is Memorial Day weekend.
Yeah, I think that makes it even it stings a little more. I'm glad that the law enforcement, the Secret Service in this case, is okay. I'm glad they eliminated the threat as rapidly as they did. That is a testament to their training. That's a testament to the character of these men and women. And again, my prayers go out to this innocent bystander that was struck. We'll learn more about that as the information comes in. Hopefully they are still alive. And if they are, we wish a speedy recovery. Unfortunately, when you have incidents like this, instigated by this perpetrator, it's unfortunate when innocent bystanders, the collateral damage, as we say, happens. And that's a byproduct of it. Same thing at war. But I cannot applaud the Secret Service and the law enforcement enough. And, as we wait, more information will come out to close the motivation behind this. But I can't thank you guys enough for having me. And again, God bless our men and women in blue.
All right, Mike Sorelli, thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you.
Okay, Randy, I want to go back to you. We have a statement here from a Democratic lawmaker that condemns political violence. Congresswoman Betty McCollum from Minnesota. She says, "I'm grateful for the swift response by Secret Service to the shooting that took place near the White House this evening. The sudden rise in political violence we have seen in recent years is unacceptable. We must unite behind a common belief that our differences should be resolved at the ballot box." What's your comment to that?
Amen. Thank you. I appreciate that comment from her. And I wish that we would hear more from the Democratic leadership and members of the Senate and the Congress, echoing those sentiments. I was just in Washington, D.C. last week for National Police Week, and that was a very spiritual time for the American law enforcement officer. Thousands of police officers descended on Washington, D.C. to pay homage to those men and women who have given their lives in the line of duty. And I was literally on that corner where this took place during my time in Washington, D.C. And it was a moment when I was there on the National Mall when I witnessed about 20,000 American law enforcement officers raise candles while the names of the officers who were killed in the line of duty last year were read aloud. And I can tell you that the American law enforcement community is solidly behind every one of these men and women who were forced to defend their lives today. And they understand that tomorrow it may be them that is forced to use their firearms to save either their own lives, the lives of the community that they serve, or anyone in the political machine.
All right, Randy, we're going to show some footage now of officers responding to the incident If we take a look at it here, we want to get your response to what we're seeing. It looks like it's one of the injured people that they're helping. I don't know if it's the suspect or if it's the bystander. Okay, well, I'm being told it's the bystander. What is your reaction to what we're seeing?
Yeah, I would say it's the bystander, because if it was a suspect, they'd have handcuffs on him. First thing you do when you have a suspect who is down is you have to make sure that that individual is secured. So that looks to me like they are trying to take care of someone who was an innocent. You know, this is part of the harsh reality of law enforcement, and that is that when you are in a critical incident, and that's what we call things like a gunfight, a shooting is all comes under the umbrella of critical incident. You're forced to make decisions in literal milliseconds that may have ramifications for decades to come. And this is part of the reality of being a police officer. It is very difficult to train effectively for critical incidents. You do your very best. You try and learn your weapons. You try to go to the range. You try to prepare yourself physically and mentally and emotionally for these critical incidents. But when these incidents do occur, they have far-ranging effects, not just on the individual officer, but their families, the families of those who have been affected. In this particular case, we have an innocent who is struck, and this is going to affect hundreds of people, not just those who are struck by gunfire or the people who actually open fire. This is going to have ramifications on their families as well. So this is something that that police officers train for, but you can train and train and train until you actually live through an experience like this. It's very difficult to explain it.
Yeah, and as you say, they have to make a split-second decision. They have to react quickly, and we know this is Memorial Day weekend. As our reporter Mario Otsu said, there are a lot of people milling around there now. They're curious. They're tourists, maybe, maybe locals as well. They start to gather around. They want to see what's going on, and we don't know, how many people were out there when this incident happened. But, if people are in the way and you're trying to protect the White House and the president, unfortunately, these kinds of things can happen. Now, I want to go over another statement that we have here from New York City Mayor Zohran Mamdani. He says, "I'm horrified that gunshots have been fired near the White House and grateful to the Secret Service for their swift response. There is no room for political violence in our democracy." What's your response to his reaction?
Nice and appropriate words.
Now, we talked earlier.
That's what I'm going to say.
Okay. We talked earlier about some of the comments that some of the Democrats have made, even after the White House Correspondents' Dinner. In some ways, I feel like they were blaming President Trump for these things that are happening. We've got two appropriate comments here from a Democratic lawmaker and a Democratic Socialist mayor. What are you expecting maybe tomorrow from some of the Democratic lawmakers? Are you expecting their comments to get a little less appropriate?
Oh, I wouldn't doubt that one tiny little bit. Listen, we heard from some Democratic leadership that they believe that the shooting at the White House Correspondents' Dinner was a setup for political purposes by the president. I mean, you can't get any crazier than emotions when it comes down to this president. I've never seen anything like it. So here's what my hope is. I hope that we actually start seeing a centering and a return to some sense of normalcy when it comes down to the compassion for crime victims. we have seen the literal abuse of crime victims over the last, I'm going to say the last decade, where it seems that those who are responsible for committing violent acts are given more and more benefits and more compassionate responses than those who have fallen victim to the criminal conduct. And we have seen in all reality, we have seen a diminishment of consequences for crime, for violence. We've seen the rewarding in many ways of people who commit acts of violence. And we've seen rhetoric from the left that seems to condemn law enforcement and their responses, and instead condemning them for taking actions against the criminal conduct that they are sworn to protect against. So we've seen a lot of changes in the criminal justice system in the last, I'm going to say, it's actually more, but I'm going to say 10 years, where we have seen an incredible change that has made the streets less safe for citizens. In this particular case, less safe for the President of the United States as well.
All right, Randy, thank you so much for your comments. We're now going to bring in Lieutenant Colonel Darren Gobb. He's an NTD contributor. Lieutenant Colonel Gobb, we want to get your comments on everything happening so far overall, but particularly about what the Secret Service reported that an individual approached. He removed a weapon from his bag and began firing at posted officers.
Yeah, that in and of itself tells a bit of a story, because if you're going to be part of an organized crime unit or even a terrorist unit, this is not what that looks like. This looks more like either a lone wolf motivated actor, or, as some of the initial reports I'm hearing, about somebody with a history of mental illness, which is no excuse, but could just be a factor and a fact involved. And so ultimately what it comes down to is you've got a person who's going to throw some rounds out of a pistol at the White House, which is one of the most defended buildings on the planet, frankly, a place that I have worked, where I've worked with the Secret Service. I'm familiar with how the area is secured from the visible to the invisible. And if you're going to do that, and that's all you're going to do, your odds of success are near zero. So the reporting is yet to determine, motivations and exact ID, things like that. But I suspect you're going to find out that this person probably had some issues, may have been motivated by some of the things he's heard in the news, or a lone wolf style person. But how they did it meant that they kind of knew that there was very little to no chance of any kind of success other than to get some notoriety and attention.
Now, Randy and I were talking earlier about some of the responses from a Democratic lawmaker, Congresswoman Betty McCollum, and also from the New York City Mayor, Zohran Mamdani. He said that they were, appropriate comments to make. But in your opinion, do you think that the comments could escalate as the days go on? Because we did hear some more inappropriate, maybe, comments made by some of the Democratic lawmakers after the Washington White House Correspondents' Dinner.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if they did. They're looking for anything often just to be able to cast aspersions on what happened and try to blame somebody other than the actual perpetrator of the crime. That's an unfortunate reality in our nation these days, and it's not purely a Democrat thing. Obviously, both parties at times can be a part of this if they're not careful. So I think for these officials to come out and say something this early and appropriate is at least a decent start, but I wouldn't put it past the usual, I guess, cast of characters to start turning this into something that it is not, especially if the information isn't right there up front in front of everybody all the time, because people are just going to fill in what they don't know on their own and turn it into something that it isn't, and all too often. And then they're going to try to use it to score political points, to try to get on camera or something like that. I certainly hope it doesn't happen. It does a disservice to those who are in charge of the security around the White House and to those who responded. And frankly, it can do a bit of a disservice potentially to the person who was killed and whatever the situation is there too. Often these folks talk before they know what is actual fact on the ground.
All right, Randy, I know you have to get going, but before you leave, I want to get your final thoughts on this incident and what's progressed so far, given that this is Memorial Day weekend.
Well, I think it's I think it's the quintessential aspect here is that Memorial Day weekend is that this is when we honor those who have served this nation. And these officers who were in harm's way today, they are individuals, they're not military, they are law enforcement. They are servants of this nation. And today they acted with honor. They acted with courage, with bravery, and with competence. And every American can be proud of them. I know that I am.
All right, Randy Sutton, thank you so much for your words and for coming on tonight.
Thank you.
Okay, Lieutenant Colonel Gobb, I want to go back to you to some of the statements that we've gotten. We've gotten a statement from the House Republican Conference. It says, thank God President Trump is safe. Endless gratitude to the Secret Service for their immediate heroic response. Political violence has to stop. House Majority Leader Steve Scalise saying violence is never the answer. Your thoughts on that?
Well, first of all, of course, we're glad that everybody's safe regardless of who they are. But it's a little early to say that this was a specific target against Trump himself, even if that's not what was intended. That's how many will hear that. And I think a generic statement like some of those is appropriate, but to read too much into motivations and intentions at this point is too early. Certainly, ultimately, though, what I'm really happy about, though, and as always, is when the security teams and the people who are serving around the White House and in the greater D.C. area in general, when things work out the way they're supposed to, when they have to. It's unfortunately that it had to happen in the first place, but nevertheless, those procedures were put into place. They reacted appropriately, from what I can tell, to a threat at the White House perimeter. And I think this story will be fairly short-lived after we hear about some of the facts about the person involved. We'll see. But I have no doubt we'll get some more statements coming. But so far, those are generally appropriate. And I would say that more than just President Trump, I'm glad that everybody in the White House staff and everybody around there is also safe.
And as you said, we don't know whether or not President Trump was the target. But as House Majority Leader Steve Scalise said, violence is never the answer. Mm-hmm. They're saying political violence has to stop. We don't know if it was politically motivated or not, but just the fact that there's this kind of violence happening, whether it's directed at President Trump or not. Do you agree that, of course, this has to stop, but what can we do? What can the president do or Congress or anyone do to stop people from continuing to just take matters up in their own hands?
I wish there was an easy button answer to all that, of course. But our society in general has gone down the route of accepting and oftentimes advocating violence, defending the violent, and accusing victims. That's all too frequent. So the general answer, of course, that violence is never the answer, that is true. That will always be true. But the question then becomes, what motivated them in the first place? Whether this be political violence or whether it is mental instability, and this just happened to come together at this moment and this time and this place, maybe. But it's unfortunate that we're at a place in our society now where there's so much hatred and advocacy for violence out there on multiple different outlets, that sometimes people play out on that, and that is unfortunate, and sadly, I don't think it's going to be the end.
Now we have another statement here from Republican Congressman Brian Babin from Texas. He says, as we wait for more information, one thing is clear: the culture of political violence in this country must end. Thankful President Trump is safe and praying for everyone involved, including the innocent bystander reportedly in critical condition and the brave Secret Service agents who rushed into action. So again, a very similar response as the others that we've gotten. We talked earlier to our reporter there on the ground, Mari Otsu, about what she was seeing. She talked about how more law enforcement seemed to be coming on the scene, and she talked about President Trump being briefed about this. And we know after the White House Correspondents' Dinner incident, he did hold a press conference. Would it be appropriate for him to hold a press conference on this incident, given that he seems to be pretty busy?
Now, for this one, I'd probably wait for some more of the facts to come out before I would hold a press conference by the president and use the president's time to do so. This could certainly be handled by Capitol Police or some agency if they decide to delegate to them to update people on what exactly happened. But I don't think this is going to elevate itself to an opportunity for the president to respond to this. If he does, I think it would go more down the line of continuing to push for, stopping the political violence and the rhetoric again, rather than the specifics of this incident, unless something comes out that makes it very obvious that this was completely politically motivated and this guy was motivated by somebody else to do this. Other than that, I think he's got more than enough on his plate, and I don't think he would do a press conference.
All right, Lieutenant Colonel Gobb, thank you so much for coming on this evening on this short notice. We appreciate all your comments, and you have a very good evening.
You too. Thank you.
And that concludes our breaking news coverage of the incident that happened today at the White House. Stay tuned for more information on this tomorrow and throughout the week as the developments unfold. I'm Arlene Richards. Good night.
Back up on the tape, what is it?
Yeah, I just need to get grab the mic.
A limited amount of room here.
You'll be able to, so nothing's changed, you can be able to show the same stuff?
Affirm, yep.
Is there enough light on it?
I'll make there be enough light on it.
Okay. Yes, I have you, Adrian. The anchor is Brian, correct? Brian Abel? Okay, sounds good, thank you.
I think they're letting people with cars out. That labor is saying that you're going to work. Starbucks. Oh, never mind. So, yeah, that was they're like, you want to go Starbucks? Yeah. Andrew said there's no press conference, so. I'm taking
customer service, because I told him.
Oh, there you go.
Whoa! Awesome. Maybe go get us all Coke?
Leave my car in the
Get us all the
garage.
what?
I got a video cover. So,
Are you going to the bathroom?
Good luck.
There was a shooting, 2 people are dead. Oh, okay. Right, but there's crime scene and evidence, the police are collecting evidence to the a small outfit from the Associated Press. Thank you. Yes, sir. I'm glad you picked up on the joke. You on, brother? Yeah. Be good.
Who are you with again?
Small outfit. Come on, where are you?
That's a better perspective. I wouldn't disagree, but fair enough. This is my first day. My first EC.
Congratulations. Well, there's a better view of the White House from 8th Street. What if they do Lafayette Park? Yeah. So you're at Pennsylvania, go up a couple, 3 blocks, go that way, nice and right down the aisle.
Are we allowed that close right now?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay, really?
Yeah, yeah, you should be able to get to H.
Okay, got it.
If not, you can still see it from I as well. You know.
How old was the...
Unknown. Wait. They never told us yet. So they may never. It's a secret service. They got secret in the name.
Exactly, I got that.
Thank you.
Y'all take care. Enjoy your trip.
Thank you, sir.
Cheers. the 100 to 400 or 4.5. family. So they put a cone right over there. They put an evidence cone, see it right there? It's the likely of the bullet. There. Sure. Okay, so at some point they're going to bag all this evidence up and put all this shit away. What are your plans? Yeah, I know. Unless they brought out light, it was really tough. Oh, okay. So, remember what I said? I told the lady from APTV that I just happened to lunch with. She's a very nice lady. And filmed me, and it was so nice. She has a New York Bureau that happened to be here today. Since we met about a year ago, we were in the one guy, what's his name? The Soli's left, Dan's left, Rick's left. Well, no, what's his name is still there. You know the guy that had the little long hair and cut it?